Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
More than 10,000 homes have been sitting empty for longer than 10 years, despite a spiralling homelessness crisis. It's according to new research from the Liberal Democrats, with the party calling this situation a national scandal.
Well, there is an enormous amount of empty property. I mean, the 11,000 that have been there for over 10 years is the tip of the iceberg. But there are 200,000 homes that have been unoccupied for over 6 months. Now, some of these are there for rather complicated personal reasons around the family. A lot of them are investment properties, and in areas like Cornwall, for example, where there is an acute shortage of accommodation for local people, you have thousands of second homes, many of which are never visited from one year to the next. And this is a major issue at a time when we have chronic homelessness problems, all the problems that were highlighted over Christmas of people sleeping rough. You know, I think 80,000 families still in temporary accommodation.
I mean, councils have the power through empty dwelling management orders to take over properties that have been empty for at least 6 months, so why aren't they doing it?
Well, that is the awkward question. There are legal powers to penalise people who have property that they never use. There are council tax penalties. The government has been trying to strengthen them, that they're rather weak. But many councils have, should they wish to have them, compulsory purchase powers, if there's no good reason why property has been left empty, so they can acquire them and use them for local housing. What is very striking and frankly rather scandalous is that less than 1 in 10 local councils have ever used these powers or taken advantage of them. And they're areas with chronic housing problems, but they've got empty property on their doorstep. They're not using the legal powers available, and it may be that they find them complicated, in which case we should obviously try to simplify them. In many cases, they just don't seem inclined to bother, which is less forgivable.
Do you think they have the money to actually purchase these properties, though? Is that not the problem, that even if they wanted to, they don't have the money to do so?
Well, there is an issue. Local authorities have been under financial pressure, and there is a bigger argument for giving councils greater freedom to borrow, to build, but actually taking over and improving old property may be a cheaper and better and quicker way of bringing property in existence for rent or sale. So, given that local councils are constrained, I mean, obviously those constraints should be lifted, but this is one of the better and cheaper options that many of them are just not using.
What would the Liberal Democrats do about this problem? If councils need more money to enable them to purchase these empty properties and provide them to people who need them, it's going to take a tax increase, I assume, to be able to fund that. Is that something you'd be in favour of?
No, what we've argued for is lifting the cap on borrowing from local councils. At the present moment, there is an absurd situation where councils can borrow pretty much unlimited amounts of money to invest in commercial property, but they can't invest in council housing, in homes, and that is a ridiculous distortion of priorities. So giving them the freedom for capital borrowing, it isn't the same as current spending, which has to be financed in taxation, would be a sensible way to proceed.
More borrowing puts more on the debt, though.
Well, not necessarily. If you generate a stream of income through rent, then the debt can be paid back or paid off and indeed generate a surplus. And sensible housing investment operates in that way. It doesn't create permanent long-term debt, but the Treasury has a very narrow, unhelpful, unimaginative approach to this. And the caps around local councils should be lifted for economic as well as social reasons.
And just finally, the government's saying in the budget that they would try to encourage owners of empty homes to bring their properties back into use by increasing council tax premium from 50 to 100%. Do you think they should do that?
I think they should do it, but it's rather modest. Of course, many of the overseas investors who are generating some of this empty property, particularly in big cities like London, are not going to be deterred by what are quite small penalties. I mean, the council tax in some inner city boroughs is very, very low, so increasing it from 50 to 100% is negligible. It would be more sensible to use the compulsory powers, or perhaps to use capital gains tax, or in some other mechanism. The council tax measure proposed is worthwhile, but it's very limited, and we should be looking at something stronger.
Okay, Sir Vince Cable, thank you for your time.